The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
We've been covering the decline of Star Wars merchandise on this channel for the last few years. For over 2 years now, we've traveled the country checking out the retail situation of the now mostly defunct Toys R Us, Walmart, Target, and a slew of other discount retail outlets such as Ollie's, Tuesday Morning, and Gabe's. No matter the location, no matter the retailer, the trips all told the same story. Star Wars toys were not selling. It was such an odd thing too because Star Wars had just been relaunched in late 2015, but by mid-2016, a glut of merchandise began to clog retail chains, eventually killing interest in Star Wars. Our first video came out in August of 2017. Back then, we saw an excess of Star Wars merchandise falling off store shelves as leftovers from The Force Awakens were buried by mountains of unsold Rogue One merchandise, only to be joined by the unsellable merchandise from The Last Jedi a few weeks later. Back then, the videos were met with anger, denial, and disbelief from fans. But as the months rolled on, people became aware of the state of the Star Wars line, and we continued to document the decline of the line. Fast forward to February 12th of this year, 2020, and we learned that the Star Wars line isn't down, but up? There's no way that... Well, shit. I guess it is. Frozen and Star Wars rescued Hasbro during the holidays. Hasbro had good news for investors on Tuesday. It looked like many kids wound up getting Elsa, Rey, and Black Panther toys as holiday gifts. Let me just stop the writer right here because their agenda is showing. Just wanted to point that out. Now back to the article. Hasbro reported fourth quarter earnings Tuesday that topped forecast. Sales were up only 3% during the holiday quarter though, missing Wall Street's forecast. Shares of Hasbro fell slightly on the news. The company said it benefited from strong demand during the holidays from toys tied to Frozen 2 and the latest Star Wars movie, as well as Marvel's Avengers, a sign that Hasbro's partnership with Disney continues to pay big dividends at a tumultuous time for the overall industry. The demise of Toys R Us, the retailer that went bankrupt in 2017 and shut its doors a year later, had not helped Hasbro and its rivals, even though Toys R Us has enjoyed a small comeback in the past year with opening a few stores under a new different ownership. Hasbro and other toy makers had to rely more on Amazon, Walmart, and Target, three giant retailers that tend to rely on discounts to lure shoppers for a big bulk of their sales. Hasbro also said in October that sales and profits were hurt by tariffs as a result of the trade spat between the United States and China. Since it came from a reputable source, I'll believe it. But how is Star Wars selling better? I don't believe there was a huge rush to retailers for Episode 9 merchandise, because there was barely any. The Rise of Skywalker has the luxury, and by luxury I mean the embarrassment, to be the only Star Wars film in the saga to not have a dedicated 3 3/4 inch toy line. Yes, they were figures, but they were part of the vintage collection, which included classic characters like Luke Skywalker. So there can't be more sales of sequel trilogy stuff because there's less made. Same for the Black Series. All you had was Rey, Kylo, Jaina, 2 Stormtroopers, and a Knight of Ren. But those sets also included Luke Skywalker, Wedge Antilles, and characters from The Mandalorian. You see, there's nothing exclusive to that movie. The only thing I could think of for the increase in sales was Baby Yoda. Last year, The Mandalorian took Star Wars fans by storm. Figures of The Mandalorian himself demand a high premium value on the secondary market, and Baby Yoda? Well, people went nuts for that little guy. We covered the Baby Yoda phenomenon last year, and we thought it was interesting how many different pieces of merchandise were available for pre-order. Let's take a look at what we had to say back in December. While The Mandalorian is cool and all, Baby Yoda is the real character that captured the attention of the internet. Memes, photoshops, and even guest spots on SNL. You know a character is caught on when he has all of those things. But it's because he's just so cute. I'm just ready to buy right now. Let's go back to Big Bad Toy Store where an entire section of the site is dedicated to Baby Yoda. Ooh, a doll.
I don't need it. I don't need it.
Little figures.
Definitely don't need it.
Oh my god,
I
Funko
don't need-
Pops.
I need it!
I'll buy them all. I'll buy them all right now. I can't? Why? Why can't I get one for Christmas? Tears aside, it looks like Baby Yoda won't be available until well into next year, with Big Bad Toy Stores advertising a March through May window. While some people may say this is terrible, I say that it's great. Jump back to Christmas 1977 when Star Wars was the hottest thing on the planet, yet there were no toys to buy. Kenner rectified this by offering an empty box that guaranteed 4 figures would arrive in early 1978. The Star Wars toy line would go on to become one of the greatest toy lines in history. Kind of funny how even with a slight hiccup at the beginning, greatness can ensue. So when the demand was high, people were buying a lot of Baby Yoda in advance because there was no merch available for Christmas 2019. Now there are a few reasons why this could be the case. Disney was too scared that the character would leak and the cynical fans wouldn't accept The Mandalorian. Retailers didn't have faith in more cutesy crap from Star Wars, see Porgs, or it was just a massive oversight. All three are plausible. Thankfully, our friends over at Jedi Temple Archives have an excellent piece that breaks down the Star Wars toy news into a more honest and digestible format and gives us a little more insight as to what is selling from a galaxy far, far away. So well that it's improving Hasbro's bottom line. Hasbro partner brands revenue in 2019 was $1.2 billion. This is an increase of 24% compared to 2018. It's almost back to 2017 levels. The following chart will illustrate that. Now remember folks, before I go any further, we're talking about the overall partner brand. This doesn't just mean Star Wars, so if sales were up in 2017, we still saw the glut of merchandise from 2017. 2018 was a very bad year, but 2019 was much better again. The fourth quarter was quite strong, much stronger than in previous years. Fourth quarter revenue for Hasbro's partner brands was $408 million. This chart will further illustrate that. However, there's an explanation for the strong quarter 4 performance. On top of Frozen 2 merchandise in quarter 4, Force Friday was in October. Previously, Force Friday was in September. That is quarter 3. By pushing Force Friday back, quarter 3 numbers probably decreased a bit, whereas quarter 4 numbers benefited. Depending on exactly what product shipped to the US, chances are Force Friday and holiday season products shipped to the US in both quarter 3 and quarter 4. Now we cannot exactly say how much of the partner brand growth can be attributed to Star Wars. This is the only thing Hasbro had to say about partner brand performance in their official presentation. Revenue growth across portfolio including Disney's Frozen 2, Marvel, Star Wars, and Beyblade. Since Star Wars is mentioned in third place, chances are that Marvel and Frozen 2 are the primary drivers behind the growth, with Star Wars falling behind these two brands. Marvel also had Endgame in 2019 and the 80th anniversary event, which certainly boosted sales. Side note, I bought almost every Marvel Legends figure that came out in 2019 because they were fantastic. Except the Spider-Man shit because, well, they just don't do Spider-Man right. Anyway, back to the article. As you can see, supermarkets are still the most important channel now, with online following only in fourth place. But Hasbro expects tremendous growth for the online sales channel to the point that by 2025, the online channel will be the most important one, slightly ahead of supermarkets. What that means for Star Wars is clear. Expect a shift from places like Walmart and Target to online. Not just Amazon most likely, but also specialty e-tailers such as Entertainment Earth and all the others. But let's move on the earnings call. Star Wars and even the Black Series came up several times, so these are the relevant passages from the transcript. Partner brand portfolio revenues grew 24% for the full year and 50% in the fourth quarter. Disney's Frozen 2 and Descendants 3, Marvel's Avengers and Spider-Man franchises, and Star Wars contributed to the gains for the year. According to NPD, Hasbro's fourth quarter 2019 sales across the G5 markets were the highest in the brand's history, in the product category where you have the rights. Star Wars benefited from the year-end theatrical release of The Rise of Skywalker and The Mandalorian airing on Disney+. The Mandalorian Black Series figure was one of the top sellers in the fourth quarter, and Hasbro leveraged the global phenomenon of the child, affectionately called Baby Yoda, to drive pre-order sales across several new products which shipped this year. Through the new story and characters, young fans are increasingly engaging in Star Wars in major markets around the world. So, according to Mr. Goldner, kids are increasingly engaging with Star Wars. And that may be no surprise at all. The Black Series Mandalorian action figure was one of the best sellers in quarter 4. That figure demands a very high aftermarket price already. So Hasbro once more emphasizes on how kids are coming into the brand. Also, it's certainly great to hear from Black Series collectors that Brian Goldner is happy about the growth for the line. Now, everyone may guess what fan-oriented product is. Maybe he's referring to the vintage collection here. But only the Black Series was ever mentioned by name during the entire earnings call. And that's more or less pretty much it, at least concerning Star Wars. So according to Hasbro, kids are increasingly engaging with Star Wars, contrary to what some analysts think and articles on Bloomberg talked about in late 2019. The Black Series sees great growth, which is always nice to hear. The vintage collection was never mentioned once, unless you think it was referred to when Brian Goldner talked about fan-oriented product. The takeaway here is that Hasbro seems to be optimistic about the Star Wars brand. The Black Series seems to be performing quite well for Hasbro. Things like the revealed Snowspeeder certainly support the idea. As far as the vintage collection is concerned, one could think it would also benefit from the growth, but nothing was explicitly said about the line. Anyway, Hasbro will continue to be Disney's partner for the next few years. While Hasbro did not want to disclose when the new agreement will expire, we do know it's a multi-year deal. And finally, it will be interesting to see what Hasbro will do with the Clone Wars. Mr. Goldner talked about the great support around the Clone Wars. So far, there's been very little other than 2 Galaxy of Adventure figures and a few Mission Fleet toys. Let's hope that's not it. But in a Q&A at Toy Fair, Hasbro said some more will come. So let's remain optimistic here. Another positive thing is that Star Wars sales were up again in 2019 after a really bad 2018. Maybe 2020 can continue the trend with the 40th anniversary event for The Empire Strikes Back and support for The Mandalorian, and hopefully the Clone Wars in the second half of 2020. So that's great for Star Wars fans. More toys. Deep down, we all love Star Wars. I know that I'd like awesome merchandise based off the best trilogy of all time. Hell, maybe even some from the prequels too. We're living in the golden age of toy collecting, where the technology has reached a point where even basic $20 Hasbro figures look fantastic. The Hasbro sales presentation inspires hope, but it also mentions Toy Fair 2020. Let's see what Hasbro is giving us from the Star Wars line in early 2020. all of that stuff, well, most of that stuff looks great. The 40th anniversary Empire Strikes Back line looks cool, the ships look great, every era of Star Wars is nicely represented. Oh, yes, you're right. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just been informed, though it's blatantly obvious, there's nothing from the Disney Star Wars films present in the 2020 lineup. No Rey, no Finn, no Poe, nothing. If you were to show me these slides in 2012, I'd have never known another company bought Lucasfilm and they made more Star Wars movies. There's no footprint left by the Disney trilogy. Yes, The Mandalorian is Disney+, but it feels like a direct extension from the Lucas era, which is telling. It's almost like Hasbro didn't like producing thousands of Rose Tico figures, only to have them waste away at retail and clog up shelf space. I'd argue that's the case with the new sequel trilogy characters overall. None have inspiring designs, nor anything unique about them. At best, they're derivative of the original trilogy, and at worst, they're a damn joke. I saw this image over on social media, and I think it sums up Disney Star Wars quite nicely. Disney Outlet Store. Not even for half price do people want this feminist garbage. Just think about it. Who's this supposed to appeal to? Kids? Kids don't give a shit about a bossy woman who can't judge her team right and bashes Poe for doing the right thing. Adults? Adults know that Holdo is a poorly written character. There's always the argument that Star Wars is for kids, and I'd argue it's for everyone. But the merchandise is now for adults. Yes, most of us got into Star Wars at a very special age, but beyond that, Star Wars' success has something to do with the time in which you found it. If Star Wars was new today, it'd just be another film. But because it came out at the right time, it has been immortalized and will remain special to multiple generations. But its future isn't too bright. This is a quote from Jedi Temple Archives, and I think it sums up the Star Wars merchandising situation quite nicely. There's not a lot of kids playing with Star Wars action figures anymore. The primary market is adult collectors. Modern kids are playing adult video games more often than watching Star Wars cartoons and films. I guess there are collectors' parents out there who might want some toys for their kids to pass on their own love of Star Wars, but overall, the majority of kids at my daughter's school haven't seen a Star Wars film. Anime is more popular among teens and preteens than normal cartoons. Now because of the horrible American style. Cal Arts destroyed Thundercats. If Star Wars did some animation in the style of Avatar: The Last Airbender or Naruto, they might find a better market for kids and teens. This is me cutting in here. They tried that with Galaxy of Adventures, and that didn't work. The Mandalorian is the epitome of what we want as Star Wars fans, especially collectors. Favreau included characters and vehicles from the collecting community like the Imperial Troop Transport, Incinerator Trooper, and all the new Mandalorian designs. I bet he'll bring in some Dulocs and some Forest Rangers too, if he takes the Mandalorian to Endor. Anyway, they brought the vintage collection back just to let it slowly rot and lack any releases. So, yeah, now just for fun, let's take a look at where all the Disney Star Wars merchandise ends up. Clearance. Fellows, hit the music.